Thank y'all so much for cutting your naps short for me this afternoon. I really appreciate it very much. And it is the perfect nap Sunday with like drizzly rain and it's kind of cool and yeah, so sorry about that. But I tell you, I will make it worth your while. How about that? We will be here and I will make it worth your while. That QR code will take you directly to digitalparentingworkshop.com/resources. So if you want to check that out, scan that, you can go to that website. That is a website I put together just a few years ago. I actually went a long time not having a website for this workshop, and so now I've got a proper one with resource pages, and I will reference quite a few of those, maybe not in this talk, but maybe in the next one and the third talk that we're going to have this afternoon. And so just to give you a little bit of a structure here, we've got 3 talks. Now they will be compressed just a little bit because of our time. But other than that, I think we're going to have a really good discussion. We're going to have how to be a better digital parent first to kind of set the stage and kind of give you some stuff to think about. I did this for you last year, I believe, so maybe some of this will feel familiar. And but it's changed. I try to update these every August. And so some of this stuff has changed already, and we'll have new and better information. If you have a question at any point, if you have something to add at any point, if you say that's wrong, make sure you call that out. So again, we're going to go through that. We're going to have this first session. The next session will be about social media. I'm really looking forward to that discussion because that's an all-new session. That's one I just wrote. I literally burned it all down and rewrote it from the ground up because of what I read in the Anxious Generation. If you have not read that book, you should absolutely do so. And so I'll be referencing a few things from that. But in the third session, we're going to be talking about digital or device control in your home and beyond. And we're going to be talking about the ins and outs of some settings. And the reason why we're looking at there's only one session for settings and there's 2 sessions for like discussion and stuff is because so much of digital parenting is wrapping our minds around this stuff. And I told kids this morning, I'm not here to talk to you today about your quote-unquote good or bad behavior online. I'm here to talk to your parents. This belongs in your court. The ball is in your court. You can only do so much. The kids can only do so much. You as parents have to go out there and be those parents every single day. So I said there's 103 workshops I've done. I've done some in Texas, and I just got through going to Indiana again for the second time this year, which was great. But it's been really, really fun, really, really wonderful to be able to do this year. Have y'all ever seen Vegas Vacation? Anybody ever seen that? I may have talked about this last fall. It's a silly, stupid movie, right? But there's this one part where they're at the Hoover Dam, right? And I could not help myself. My family is staying 2 hours north in a cabin on the North Carolina border, middle of nowhere. And it's near the Hiwassee Dam. And they have a DAM store. And this popped up. I was just like, oh, that's so funny because they're at the Hoover Dam and there's so many jokes about anyway. So this wall is like sweating and he notices like these leaks and he thinks, oh yeah, I'm gonna take my gum. I've got gum in my mouth. I'm gonna plug that hole. And he plugs the hole and the leak stops and he's like really proud of himself, right? And then another leak starts, and then another leak starts, and then he starts chewing more gum. He calls his daughter over, and they start chewing more gum, and they're plugging all these holes, and it's like from a cartoon, right? And he goes and does this, and eventually there's so many holes, and there's so many things, and they just kind of throw up their hands and walk away and hope nobody saw it, right? And I kind of tell that story because I think every time I see this, every time I think about this, that's how parenting can feel sometimes, right? That's exactly how it feels. And that's sometimes how digital parenting feels. When you're trying to control this technology and you're just like, man, I got it. I got these settings dialed in. I've got all this nailed. You have like 2 more problems, especially have multiple kids. Because I don't know if you knew this or not, but multiple kids, they have different personalities. They're not the same personality. Did you know that? So it's kind of crazy. Nobody told me that, Ben. Nobody told me that. Your kids, if you have multiples, will have different personalities. Just write that down, okay? This is a parenting issue much more than it is a technology issue. Now, why would you think I would say that? Because right there at the bottom, it's more about mindset than it is about settings. Yes, you got to do the work, and yes, you've got to make sure that all this stuff is protected for your family and for your kids, but it really is about staying on top of it, having the best attitude around it. You can get really, really discouraged really quickly because you can go, man, there's like a million, they want to play a million games, and there's a million settings, and there's a million things to keep track of, and we've got a million passwords. We've got passwords for our passwords, but if you do your work, do your homework, and treat it like kind of like another job, which is the way I look at it, I've got to perform every single day, it feels like. I've asked this question at every workshop: do you know what your children are doing? If you're old enough to remember the television, they turned off the broadcast at like midnight. Like if you're old enough to remember that, they used to like show the American flag and fireworks, and they'd have, they'd play the national anthem, and then they'd just turn the broadcast off, and it was off until like, 6 in the morning. And sometimes they would say stuff like, do you know where your children are? It's midnight. Do you know what you're wearing tomorrow? That's what they would say. It was hilarious, right? So my question is, do you know what your children are doing? Not just where they are physically, not just even how they're growing spiritually, but do you know what your children are doing? Do you know who they're following? Do you know what they're sharing? Do you know what they're interested in? Do you know? Because it's your job to know. And it's a big job. I start off with Psalm 127:1. I think about Psalm 127:1 a lot. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. I think about the things that we're building. The things that we're building. Our children are building their homes, their future homes right now based upon the environment that they're growing up in. Do you know that? It's pretty scary to think about. Because everything that I'm doing is contributing to their future home. Because when you think about what you say right now, like I will say things and I'll go, that is my Father speaking, not me. What is this? And that we're preparing ourselves for those futures. We're preparing our children for those futures. And so what are we building, and if we're wasting time, if we're discounting a huge part of what we're talking about in building our families in this digital world and using this digital technology. For a long time, when I started this workshop, I was just trying to shake people's shoulders and say, pay attention to this stuff. And now I really don't have to do that all that much, but it's this idea of stand up, pay attention, figure out these things, do the work that's required, and be relentless and intentional about all these things that you're trying to do. I think everybody would agree that you really want to be relentless and intentional when it comes to protecting your kids. Well, we have to do that on these devices as well. It's the same thing applies. So the first thing this afternoon, technology moves fast, and so do your kids. We know this. We know that stuff changes rapidly. Actually, the technology is not changing very much. I love the meme with the guy wearing the plaid shirt, and he gets the same plaid shirt for Christmas. And it's like, this is the new iPhone this year. It's like, but technology is not changing. We're not seeing those giant leaps anymore, are we? We might, again. But what we're seeing is the stuff that the content is going fast. The memes are coming fast. How many of y'all have a middle schooler in your home? What is it with that? And it's not bad. I looked it up, right? Because immediately when I hear these memes, I'm just like, oh, I'm looking that up. And it's not based upon anything that's bad. Now, it's based off a rap song or whatever like that. But I'm just like, how does this stuff latch on and get popular? Like, there's no rhyme or reason to it. And so keeping up with that stuff is probably sometimes more difficult than actually keeping up with the actual technology. So keeping up with the content versus keeping up with the memes, or keeping up rather with the technology, is more important. And so we think about this, and I love this quote from Albert Mohler. The digital age is upon us. In the span of less than 3 decades, we have redefined the way that humans communicate, entertain, inform, research, create, and connect. And what we know now is only a hint of what is to come. I told the kids this morning, this technology that we have, these phones, They promise true connection. That is something that only the church can provide. That is something only the church that Jesus Christ built and died for can truly, truly give us, is that true connection, okay? And so again, when we think about all these things that have changed, if you've got a middle schooler, they probably have uttered one of these phrases, hey, Daddy, what was it like growing up in the 1900s? And I'm like, you make it seem, because when we were growing up, the 1900s was like 1910, right? But when they say 1900s, it's like they mean just 25 years ago. What was it like growing up? And it's like, you make it sound like we had no internet. And I'm like, but I didn't grow up with any internet. And you make it sound like we didn't have things like Netflix and YouTube. And I didn't have those till after college. Like, oh, it's okay. Yeah, that's how old I am now, right? And truthfully, it has changed so dramatically. Like Albert Mohler here says, just in the last 3 decades, hasn't it? Stuff has changed so dramatically. Like, remember what we used to have to deal with? The internet was a place you had to go to. You had to go and check your email on the library computer if they even had them, right? And you had to sit through with America Online. And I won't even get started on how teenagers look at me when I talk about a phone booth. They're like, what are you talking about? And they have no idea what that even is. And if you're under the age of 30, you might actually not know what it is either. That's how quickly they disappeared, right? But you think about it, the yellow pages for Huntsville, Alabama was this thick. Like it was a booster seat, okay? I felt like I was doing this. It was like a Chinese place, like just trying to find that stuff. And that was that might as well be ancient history to some of these kids, right? Because they have whatever they want, whenever they want it. We do too. We're in that group now too, of being able to rewind things on TV. We went to Disney this past May, and we didn't have our Apple TV with YouTube TV hooked up. And they were like, rewind it. Why can't we rewind it? It's like, because you can't rewind it everywhere. Like they just did, but it did not compute with them that was not ubiquitous and universal across everywhere. It's kind of crazy. When we used to want to see stuff on live, like we watch live sports now. But Ben and I watched a race that had happened, 6 hours before? So we watched it delayed. People watch stuff delayed now. We don't hardly watch anything together except news and sports. And our kids, they don't have the background of knowing what it was like in what my middle schooler calls the before times. See, I call before times prior to 2020. That feels like before times to me, right? But he calls before times, that was the time Daddy grew up, right? It's so weird. But I'd say, we always blame kids for being distracted and not paying attention. It's been that way for a long time. Like, I'm sure that these men on this train in 1929, I'm sure they talked to one another at some point. But it's always been a problem. So we shouldn't act like this is a new thing. Granted, newspapers are not nearly as addictive as our phones are. In turn, television was not nearly as addictive as our phones were. I've heard people say that over and over too. Well, I watched a bunch of TV growing up and I turned out just fine. TV's not the same. Even today's TV, taking more cues from social media and short form stuff, is not the same as our phones. Our phones are designed to be addictive. We'll talk a little bit about that in our social media. By the way, we are going to absolutely stomp social media this afternoon. And tonight, I'm going to absolutely stomp social media. It's not a matter of me. It's not a matter of hating it and saying that it's evil, because it's not evil. It's neutral. It's how we use it. But I'm going to just kind of prepare you for that. Is like one of those things that we're going to be talking about is really social media needs some more attention, okay? It needs more of our attention as far as management of it. So again, distraction, temptation have always been a problem. I showed this photo in teen class this morning. It's also not a discriminator of age. We are all, and I could not get my phone out fast enough for this picture, we are all addicted. To some degree, we are all addicted. The only difference is our kids are more susceptible to that than we are. Most of the time, we have the ability to go, I'm doing this too much. But a kid's brain doesn't work like that sometimes. They can't detach. They can't recognize what's happening to them in the moment, rather they realize it afterwards. You as parents have to help them with that. Number two, we can never use the excuse that we did not know. I'm embarrassed to say that I actually just did my taxes last week for 2024. This is the latest I've ever waited, but it was one of those things where my tax accountant had gotten sick and he was whatever. But my first year in ministry, there was a situation where I didn't know the right thing to do, and I gave my taxes to my accountant. I was on time and everything like that. Thought I had it all put together, and he comes back and says, hey, you owe $4,000. And I said, I've been married for 6 months. I don't have $4,000, might as well be $4 million. So what did I do? Well, I just told the IRS, well, I didn't know, so that's okay, right? And they went, oh, yeah, sure, that's fine. Don't worry about it. No. You know what they said? We'll be happy to set up a payment plan for you, Mr. Landman. Sign here, dot here, answer that. And that was it. The thing is the information was out there for me to find it. The class that I took at Freed-Hardeman that I should have been paying more attention into was there. I simply did not do the work to find out. And when we have the same situation that happens to us in digital parenting, where we say something around the lines of, well, I didn't know they had that app on their phone. Well, I didn't know that app could do that. I didn't know that he or she was following that person. I didn't know they were having a conversation with this person over the last 6 months. I didn't know any of that. Why? My question, why didn't you know? I mean, it literally is your job to be nosy about this stuff. There's not really a privacy here when it comes to your kids. And they need to understand that everything done on these devices, none of it is a secret. And that's difficult for us. In fact, if maybe you have found yourself in the situation of having kids that have phones and have had phones for a little while, and yeah, maybe they got some protections on them, maybe they don't, but they've largely been unregulated on those phones, it could be difficult to put the toothpaste back in the tube on that and say, no, now we've got rules. Now we've got guidelines. Now you've got to, and that could be very difficult for you. But one thing we have to considerably think about is how are we protecting our kids, and are we doing enough to protect our kids? And if you ever question yourself and say, maybe I'm doing too much, then you're probably doing just enough. That's how it should be. You know, I always try to apply the Bible whenever I can, and I think about these scriptures. And Matthew 18 is an interesting one because the apostles were coming to him and they were asking these bananas kind of bonehead questions like, who's the greatest, Jesus? Who's the greatest? Hey, tell us who's the greatest. Who's number one in your book? Kind of this kind of stuff. And he goes, he pulls a kid next to him. He pulls a child next to him. I can just see him pulling this child to him and sitting him on his knee and saying, you need to be like this child. If you have the mind of this kind of child, this attitude of this kind of child, then you'll be the first in the kingdom of heaven. And that's kind of where we stop sometimes with that illustration. We kind of say, oh, that's such a good illustration, and that'll preach, right? But then we look at what he says next, Matthew 18:6. Whoever causes one of these little ones to believe in me to stumble, it'd be better for him to have a heavy millstone hung around his neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea. Wow, that's pretty extreme, Jesus. It'd be better for you to tie a concrete block around yourself and throw yourself in the river than to cause a child to sin, to stumble. I think Jesus was serious about that, don't you? I think Jesus was serious about being either actively leading our kids into sin or being negligent and letting themselves be led into sin. And so when we think about What Jesus says here, I think he may have not said phones, he may have not said technology or social media, he may have not named any of that, but that's what he's talking about. Proverbs 29:15 is another one of those verses. We sit there and read the first part of that verse, and we see the rod of reproof give wisdom, and we think, yeah, the rod, the rod of discipline, right? And yes, our kids need discipline. They probably need more than we're giving them. The society as a whole probably needs a lot more discipline and a lot more different things, right? But we stop there and we say, well, the rod of reproof. But then the second part of that verse, Proverbs 29:15, but a child who gets his own way brings shame to his mother. Some versions say a child left to himself, meaning not left alone by themselves, but left to their own devices, left to their own, if they're allowed to make the decisions, guess what? They're kids. And they're gonna make dumb decisions. Because guess what? You did the same thing when you were a kid too. And so when we think about this idea, and the reason why I got a picture of hands, we've got to guide our children in these things. We guide them in so many different things. We hold their hands when they're walking across the parking lot. It broke my heart with the first time my middle schooler, I went to hold his hand and he pulled his hand away and I went, oh, the moment has arrived, right? He no longer thinks I'm cool. But it's one of those kinds of things where we hold their hands, we tell them not to do these things. We're worried about where they physically are. We need to be worried about what they're seeing. We need to be worried about how we're guiding them in every single step. Let's keep moving. Some really interesting statistics. Some of these have changed a little bit. I've added some of them, but the one from 2022 is still the one that I kind of roll with. There's probably over 2 billion sites on the internet right now. 68 million of those dedicated to nudity pornography. That comes out to about 0.06%. Internet is huge, okay? And when you add in the app ecosystem and you count those as websites, and then it just becomes astronomical, okay? That's the number, though, that we need to be concerned with. 1 in 5, 20% of searches made on a mobile device are for pornography. Now, pornography is the low-hanging fruit. We can pick on it all day long. There are certainly many other things that we have to watch out for, body image issues, violence, all sorts of different stuff that we have to watch out for. So porn is just one of those things that everybody just goes and thinks about. And I will tell you, it's not just affecting our young men either. Our young ladies are increasingly becoming more susceptible to this because it's just boom, all the time right in front of them. So what are we doing to protect their eyes from seeing those things? A couple of really smart people here. Adolescents who view pornography feel shame, diminished self-confidence, and sexual uncertainty. There's a significant relationship that exists between social media use at too early of an age and feelings of loneliness, including major depression in adolescents. Kids 13 to 18 years old being diagnosed with clinical depression. That just breaks my heart. Parents are the weak link in the chain when it comes to protecting their children. That means if we are the weak link, where that chain is stretched and forced open is going to be where that weak link is. It's going to break. That chain's going to break right there. We can't afford to be that weak link. The average age of first exposure to nudity or porn on a screen is 8 years old. That's actually been trending down more towards 7 years old, which is just, again, bananas to me, knowing that I have an 8-year-old at home. And this is his wholesome heart. I'll give you this example. His heart is so wholesome. He is our baby, obviously. But his heart is so wholesome that we tried to describe what pornography was to him, just so that he would know what it is. And his first reaction is, but why would somebody do that? And I'm like, I don't know, son. And you think about just the heart of a child being so innocent. Why would you want to mar that with them seeing something on a screen when they're 7 or 8 years old? 94% of children ages 18 have seen nudity on their screens, most while doing homework. You know, the parents are working most times. We have two-parent house homes. Hopefully they have two parents. A lot of kids don't have two parents, but if they have one parent, that parent is most certainly working, and that parent may not get home until 5:30. Guess what? The kid gets off the bus at 3:30. And what do you want them to do? Do your homework. Don't want to deal with it when we get home. And increasingly, they've got laptops and iPads that work really great at the school, but they don't work great at home because you don't have the same kind of filters that the school does. Because you don't have an IT guy that you pay $40,000 a year to work on that kind of stuff. So you've got to make sure that the protections are the same at school as they are at home, or even stricter. 87% of sexual solicitations are made to youth in chat apps, and you can put any chat, WeChat, WhatsApp, Snapchat, any social media service that has its private messaging feature, Facebook Messenger, Instagram Messenger. The guys that are stalking, and again, it's not just our young women, it's our young men as well. They're introducing themselves on that. Make sure that you have these protected accounts, these accounts to where if you allow your child to be on social media, which highly recommend that you don't until at least 15 or 16. If you allow them to be on social media, then at least make the account to where some random people can't just friend them out of nowhere. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about that. 67% admit to clearing a browser history or a search history, in some instances like a YouTube watch history, in order to hide internet usage from their parents. And most of the time, again, it's not them doing something really bad or searching things that are really bad. It's just something that they didn't want their parents to ask them questions about. The trap that we fall into, I think, is the trap the devil wants us to fall into. And that is, I have good kids. I hear this all the time. Well, my kids are good. I know they wouldn't do that. I trust that they wouldn't do that. I trust my kids. Your kids are not adults yet. And I know your kids are good. Don't get me wrong on that fact. But guess what? They're still kids. They're still going to make really dumb. I mean, you think about how many dumb decisions did you make when you were 17 years old? I say all the time, if this technology existed when I was 17 years old, I wouldn't be standing right here in front of you right now. That's the truth. And so when we think about our kids being constantly videoed and constantly pictures taken and all over social media and all this other different things, you've got to rein that stuff in. You got to make sure that you don't just assume, because the devil's whispering in our ears saying, you have good kids. Yeah, I know you got good kids, but you still got to protect them. You've got to do what's necessary. This is interesting. Social media use combined with depressive symptoms levels in teens ages 14 to 22 is up 18% just since March of 2020. I wonder what happened in March 2020. A lot of screens happened in March 2020 is what happened. And I don't know how they treated it necessarily here in North Georgia. I know how they treated it in North Carolina. I know how they treated it in Tennessee. There's a lot of screens happening, a lot of screen time. So hopefully we've been able to undo some of that. There are studies coming out right now of kids that were the age of my kid who were getting just about ready to go to kindergarten when all that happened, and how it influenced them and how it affected them psychologically to have a connection with a teacher on a screen rather than being able to see their face. Even the fact of wearing masks and not being able to see the full face, it's some crazy kind of stuff that is coming out with that. And that's not political. That's not saying, well, that was wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it had an effect on our kids. And so we need to make sure that we look into that. And how many of y'all have middle schoolers? Okay. If you have a middle schooler, do not give them social media, okay? Do not. There has never in the history of mankind has there ever been a worse idea than giving a middle schooler social media, period. In fact, I would go so far as to say that if you have allowed your kid to be on any form of social media in middle school, that you get them off of social media. Let me say it louder. Your middle schooler does not need to be on any form of social media, okay? okay? Please don't. And in fact, what the rules are, what psychologists and the know-it-alls are saying now is no phone or any kind of device that they can carry on their person that has access to anything before 14, and no social media access before 16. Now that may seem extreme. You're like, oh man, that seems like really, a 14-year-old is not an adult. They may look, my 13-year-old is an inch taller than me right now. It is crazy. He's not an adult though. Yes, go ahead. Don't get me started on Roblox. I want you to, if I had a graphic, a GIF of me kicking and screaming, that was how I was brought into Roblox. Because it was relentless. Daddy, I want Roblox. Daddy, I want Roblox. Please, on Roblox. And they never stopped. So I said, fine, you can be on Roblox, but here's all the rules. They're on our fridge. Roblox rules is on our fridge. You know how much they actually get to play Roblox because they don't do what we tell them to do on Roblox? They don't hardly ever get to play it. Yes, to answer your question, it could be seen as a form of social media. I think my definition of social media is a lot more broad than some people would say. I say YouTube is social media. I don't have a lot of people disagree with me on that. I love YouTube. I really do. But it is social media. It's also entertainment, right? It's something like Roblox social media. It can be if you allow them access to the broader scope. We have set hours for our middle schooler, and then we only have one of our 3 boys that play it, to where they only can do private servers and they can only see their friends. Does that make sense? In some instances, I have even, because I'm a super nerd, have put something on our Wi-Fi router that disallows them to go anywhere but those places when those settings did not allow it. But now the settings are there to where you can actually do that kind of stuff. So you can make it a very confined experience, but there again, they can't, even if they were to go into a public server, they call them, they wouldn't be able to talk to anybody, okay? But yeah, you're not wrong. Roblox is huge. How many of y'all allow kids on Roblox? Anybody? Roblox is huge. It's huge with the kids. It is, again, just like anything else. It can be fun for them, and we have a very strict time limit on it too. We have like 45 minutes a day. And when it shuts off, I mean, it's weeping and gnashing of teeth, man. It's unbelievable. Like they're like robes ripping and stuff. They're ripping their robe. I mean, it's awful, okay? But they know every single day that's when the time limit is, and it's 6:15 to 7 o'clock every night. So you see them literally sprinting through the house. I got to get my iPad at 6:18. I missed 3 minutes. It's hilarious to watch. I'm like, just tone it down, please. It is one of the things. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. That could be the case, yes.
I'm asking because I only think...
And I'm glad you asked that because that happens more often than not.
Yeah, my account had gotten overtaken. It was a business account because of all the people I had on my account.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I cannot believe it. It's mediation works, and then you see all of these half-new young girls.
Yep.
I cannot believe it. I had to try to get it shut down.
Yeah. Let that serve as a public service announcement for you. If you cannot remember the last time you changed your passwords, go change them now. Just do it. That's annoying. Oh no, we have to remember new passwords. There is a couple of apps out there that will just remember the passwords for you. There's no excuse not to have a very good password on stuff. So let that serve as a public service announcement to change your passwords. Hey, somebody tell me while we're on this thread, while we got off on this tangent here, Somebody tell me the most important password for the most important account. Somebody guess. Email, exactly. Perfect. Why? It's the key to every, man, you need to be up here teaching this. It really is, though, is it not? Because they can just go to the forgot password and then, here's a 6-digit code. Now, they've made it really secure to where they make it to where you go to your phone and you can get that, especially if you have something called two-factor authentication put on there. But even then, that's defeatable. And somebody can get access to your phone and they can get access to your phone number and all sorts of weird stuff. You think it can't happen, and then it happened to two people at Graymere within the span of 2 months. It was crazy. Now, granted, they were older people, and they did give access. That's one of the things I actually do a seniors tech every 6 months at Graymere, and the number one thing is do not give out your username and password. That is one of the only ways that people can get access to your stuff these days, if you give them that access. If you don't give them those things, it's actually fairly difficult to break into some of your accounts. Now, it's not difficult to break into some of your accounts if you've got super easy passwords that you haven't changed since 2006, so do that. But at the same time, let that serve as a public service announcement. Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Sounds like we need to have a seniors tech here.
Yes. So how do you sort of clean everything up?
Is that happening to you right now? Or somebody you know?
So how do you talk about setting also? I work with young ladies between the ages of 5 to 15, sometimes 25, and Roblox and all of that. And some strange stuff, is going on. So
In fact, Roblox has been, I'm glad you mentioned that because Roblox has actually been accused. They're in a number of lawsuits now, actually, for not protecting their users, which tend to be between ages 5 and 12, not protecting their users appropriately from online predators. And so it's kind of one of those things where we've got ours set at one of the lowest settings possible. But yeah, if they've got access, if somebody that has unauthorized access to your stuff, that is very difficult. If you can get access back and change passwords, then you absolutely need to do that. But other than that, you're going to have to go through a lengthy account recovery process, especially in the case of like Facebook or other social media apps as well. Yes, ma'am.
If she changes her password, does that only protect her going forward, or will that protect all that they got into?
Think about a password as a lock that only works for a limited amount of time. Because if somebody is really trying to get into your stuff, if they have just targeted you and they're really trying to get into your stuff, that lock is only going to last for so long. You need to be changing passwords every 3 months, probably even sooner than that, okay? I am not a network security expert, but I do understand password and password management, and it can get really murky really quickly with all that stuff.
To get that stuff back, would she have to call the company?
You can't, they don't want you to call. If you can find a number for Facebook, then let me know because they absolutely do not want you to call, okay? If they had a number for Facebook, if Facebook put a TV advertisement out there with a number, there'd be a bazillion people call it tomorrow because you can't get anything done, it seems like, with tech support or anything like that. And this goes back to these companies, they really don't care about you. If you haven't figured that out yet, like they really could care less about you or your data, right? I would be devastated if I did not have certain things backed up on my different things and stuff like that, which, by the way, another PSA, make sure you back up your computer, for crying out loud. Back up your computer. Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead. We're getting off track here. Go ahead. Yeah.
Can you please repeat people's questions for our stream?
Right. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I don't know where I can go back to. They were asking about network security for the stream and the recording, and they were asking about all sorts of when to change your passwords, how to get somebody out of a locked account. We can talk about that here in just a little bit when we talk a little bit more about security as well, okay? let's go through this, and we're going to have to skip some things. You know, all this doom and gloom, and you sit here and going, oh no, this is terrible, and all these things are terrible. They're not. I'm not trying to say that. I think I pointed out this morning that there's plenty of good things that you can do with social media. There's plenty of good entertainment out there. There's plenty of things you can have good and limited access to. However, if you find yourself needing to kind of reassess or kind of start again, or maybe you haven't started in the first place, here's a couple of steps for you, okay? So you can start by making a list of devices in your home that connect to the internet, okay? This is where you get just a legal pad, right? And you put a line down the middle, and on the left column you put what devices in your home can access the internet, and on the right column you put what parental controls are on that device. And that's period. That's a home audit. You just did a tech home audit, okay? I have a form for this for you. You don't even have to have a legal pad. You just print stuff out. There's a form on your website. If you want to put it on an iPad and do an Apple Pencil, you can do it that way, okay? So you can actually check all those devices. You can figure out what devices you need to get rid of. You can figure out what devices are outdated that you need to recycle, all sorts of stuff. Parental controls filters on every device that your child uses, and set up family sharing and screen time. We're going to talk about those in session number 3, okay? So start, if you haven't, and then plan. I am willing to bet that you have a plan for your child's college, for your retirement, right? For your, I don't know, bathroom renovation. We plan plenty of stuff, right? I bet you Ben and Amelia are planning things right now, okay? We plan for all sorts of different things. What we need to be able to do is develop a long-term plan for digital parenting as well. And so just sit down with your spouse, figure this out. And like I was joking about before, this looks different with every child. Every child is going to have a different personality. You may have children, I can tell you right now, you may have children that are going to have different ages where you give them their own device because of how they are. My middle child might not get a device till he's like 30. Seeing how the trajectory right now, right? He might not get one till he's 30. And I joke and kid, but at the same time, he is definitely not getting one when he's probably 13 or 14. That's his fault. So, what age do they have their own phone? That's the number one question I get. What age can I give my kids a phone? It's almost like parents are seeking permission. Hey, can I give my kids a phone? Don't be in a hurry to do that. You and I, hopefully, if you're over the age of 35 or 40, like you grew up without a phone. We were fine. We can deal with it. Does it make things more difficult? Yeah. Do you have to plan stuff in advance? Yeah. But it's a whole lot better than them having their own device for much longer, especially them being younger. And the difference between 13 and 14, and then 14 and 15, that's pretty significant as far as their growth, their maturity levels, all sorts of stuff, okay? So plan these things. Of course, you've heard the phrase, failure to plan is plan to fail. It is. It really is. Enforce. Strict rules when you have to. This is not pleasant. But this is the part that a lot, including myself, this is the part that a lot of parents just falter on, is the enforcement part of it. Like you can say all these big things. You can say, we're going to have this rule and this rule and this rule, and they can't do this on Roblox, and you got to enforce it, though. You got to back it up, okay? Some of the things I say is, don't let kids go to bed with phones. There were 2 kids in my classroom this morning, and when I asked, how many of y'all have different rules? 2 kids said they don't let their parents don't let them go to bed with their phones. The other kids didn't even say anything. Don't let your kid go to bed with their phone. They don't need their phone. They don't need it as an alarm clock. Those are $9.88 at Walmart. Like, get one, okay? They don't need to listen to music. We had something called compact discs. Remember those? We can do that again. Go retro, vintage, whatever you want to call it, right? Seriously, though, do not let them have a phone. Most of the instances that I have heard from parents happen between 1 and 2 a.m. in the morning. So don't let your kids have a phone at bedtime. My mom is really funny because she'll say, I was so proud I never let you have a TV in your room when I was a kid. I was like, Mom, we had 4 channels. That doesn't mean anything. Yeah, so it's just really funny, right? But when we think about That last sentence, though, interesting. Check and make sure that there's aren't any devices that you don't know about. Again, kids are kids, and they may have another device that you don't even know anything about, and they may be using it to play Roblox. Something completely innocent. They may not even be doing anything wrong on Roblox. Just the fact that they're doing something. This is the akin of like, remember, I don't know if you remember it when we were kids, but like sneaking out at night. Like, this is kind of like that in a digital way. Okay? So if you think about it that way, you say, oh yeah, I wouldn't want my kids sneaking out like digitally. I don't want that happening. Don't let them have phones in their bedrooms at night. And some of the stuff that we're going to talk about in the third session about devices, you will know. If you have an up-to-date device and you have an app to go with it, you will know when a device checks into your Wi-Fi that you don't recognize. You'll know exactly what to do with that. We'll talk about that in the third session. Go a little bit positive here and say encourage, because I told kids this morning a couple of different ways to control your technology so that your technology doesn't control you. You can do a couple of different things. I gave them the example this morning of putting your device in black and white mode. It tricks your brain into thinking that your phone is just not that interesting. It's crazy. It's actually really cool. You go into accessibility settings, you turn that on, and everything is black and white on your phone, and it really does work. Okay? This one, I'm going to do the laser pointer on this one. Turn off notifications. Turn them off. Turn them off on your kids' phones. The last thing that your kid needs is to have their phone in their backpack, them taking a very important test, and then think, oh no, that must be somebody wanting to get in touch with me about something very important, and it's probably not. Turn off notifications. Every app will ask you for notifications. Why? Why does every app want to send you notifications? To draw you back. That's it. Because they know that there's a million different apps you can choose from, and they want your attention. We're going to talk about that at length in the next session as well. Turn off the notifications. Encourage them to leave their device behind, okay? And you can do that as well. Encourage them that they don't have to be on it constantly. That's one thing I hear from kids all the time these days, is I hear from my upper teenagers, a lot of 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-olds, is, yeah, I really need my parents almost to kind of give me an excuse to not be on it constantly. I think that's interesting, that our 17 and 18-year-olds would be aware enough to be saying those things. Lastly, of course, in our families, I think we need to demand holiness and obedience. And 1 Peter 2:9 says that we are a royal priesthood, we are a holy nation, we are for God's own possession. And I really think your kids need to hear you say that all the time. All the time. Just like Deuteronomy 6, when you walk down the road, when you pass, when you do these things, saying, the Lord our God is God, the Lord our God is one. All the time. Repeating those things to them. Repeating to them how valuable they are. And we're protecting you from, I'm your protector, not your buddy or pal. I've been charged by God to protect you from these things, not just physical things, but these things that you see on your screens as well. I'm protecting your mind. Let's take a very quick break. We're done with our first session. And then I want you to come back ready to talk about social media, and we can address any other questions that you might have at the beginning of the next session, okay? Let's take a very brief break. Let's be back here at 4, please. Thank you.